Royal Guard SDORMS corridor. After hearing Charlotte scream, "It hurts, please stop." Charlotte, the young woman who had recently arrived at the royal palace, was walking down the long corridor leading to her chambers. The corridor was lined with tall, ornate pillars, and the golden light from the chandeliers cast long, flickering shadows on the polished marble floor. It was beautiful, but tonight, Charlotte did not notice the elegance. Something was wrong. She had been working in the palace library all afternoon, helping organize ancient scrolls and books that smelled of old parchment and history. The hours had been long, and her back ached from bending over the tables. As she slowly walked down the corridor, she tried to shake off the discomfort. But then, out of nowhere, someone stepped from the shadows. Charlotte's heart leapt into her throat. She froze, unsure if she should run or call for help. "Charlotte, it's okay," a voice whispered. But there was something off about it. She didn't recognize it. The words were soft, almost convincing, yet they sent shivers down her spine. She wanted to retreat, to run back toward the library, but her legs refused to obey. The figure approached, and she instinctively raised her hands. "It hurts, please stop," Charlotte cried out, her voice echoing down the corridor. It was not just a plea, it was a cry for help. The sound carried farther than she expected, bouncing off the marble walls, reaching the ears of those who were trained to protect the palace. In the royal guardhouse, not far from the corridor, the sound of her scream was like an alarm. The guards had been stationed there to ensure the safety of everyone in the palace, especially the young women who lived within its walls. Captain Rowan, a tall and experienced officer, immediately snapped to attention. Without hesitation, he grabbed his sword, strapped on his armor, and ran toward the corridor. His heart pounded, but his mind was clear. He had trained for moments like this his entire life, and now it was time to act. The corridor, though grand and beautiful, seemed to stretch endlessly as Charlotte backed away from the approaching figure. Her pulse raced, and she felt a cold sweat on her forehead. Every instinct screamed at her to run faster, to find safety, but fear slowed her steps. The stranger in the corridor stopped for a moment, appearing uncertain. Perhaps they had not expected anyone to hear Charlotte's cry, or perhaps they were taken aback by the intensity of her fear. Meanwhile, Captain Rowan and his fellow guards moved with precision. They had been trained to respond instantly to any threat within the palace. They did not panic, they did not hesitate. As they approached the corridor, they could hear the distressed voice more clearly. It was unmistakable. Someone was in trouble, and it was their duty to protect. Charlotte, noticing movement ahead, felt a spark of hope. Could it be someone coming to help her? Her legs carried her toward the sound of footsteps that were not her own, and she saw the figure of Captain Rowan emerging from the shadows. The guards flanked him, swords drawn, eyes sharp, ready for anything. Relief washed over Charlotte, but fear still gripped her. "Stay behind us, miss," Captain Rowan instructed firmly, his voice steady and commanding. Charlotte nodded, her hands trembling as she fell back behind the line of guards. The figure who had frightened her hesitated, realizing they were now outnumbered and faced with disciplined protectors. The standoff lasted only moments, but to Charlotte, it felt like hours. Every muscle in her body was tense, ready to react if needed. Captain Rowan stepped forward, his eyes locked on the intruder. He moved with a calm authority that came from years of experience. "You will not harm anyone here. Leave now," he said, his voice carrying through the corridor like a strong wind that could not be ignored. For a brief moment, everything seemed to hang in balance. The intruder's expression shifted from aggression to surprise, then to resignation. It was clear they had underestimated the royal guards and overestimated their own power in the grand palace. With a final glance at Charlotte, they slowly backed away and disappeared into the shadows from where they had emerged. Charlotte, still shaken, took a deep breath. The immediate danger had passed, but the memory of the fear she had felt lingered. Captain Rowan approached her, his expression softening. "You're safe now," he said gently. "No one will hurt you here." Charlotte nodded, tears welling up in her eyes, not just from fear, but from the overwhelming relief that someone had answered her cries. The corridor, which had seemed so threatening moments ago, returned to its quiet, grand atmosphere. The chandeliers flickered, the shadows stretched along the walls, and the palace returned to its usual calm. But Charlotte knew that things would never feel exactly the same again. She had learned that even in the most beautiful places, danger could appear unexpectedly. And she had learned the value of those who protected her, who would act without hesitation when she needed them most. Captain Rowan and his guards escorted Charlotte safely back to her chambers. She could still feel the adrenaline in her veins, her heartbeat slowly returning to normal. They made sure she was unharmed, checked if she needed anything, and reassured her that they would remain vigilant. Charlotte realized that while the palace was filled with elegance and beauty, it was also a place where courage and loyalty lived in the hearts of those sworn to protect it. As she finally closed the door to her room, Charlotte reflected on what had happened. She knew that the fear she felt was real, but so was the courage of those who had come to her aid. She would not forget this night, the night she screamed, and the royal guard stormed the corridor to answer her call for help. It was a story of fear, bravery, and the power of acting when it mattered most. After the frightening events in the corridor, Charlotte sat in her chambers, still trembling slightly. Her hands were clasped tightly together, as if holding on to something solid could keep the fear from returning. The room was warm, softly lit by a golden chandelier, but the comfort of the surroundings did little to chase away the memory of what had just happened. Every corner, every shadow seemed to whisper reminders of the danger she had faced. Outside her window, the palace gardens glowed under the moonlight. The flowers swayed gently in the night breeze, and the fountains sparkled like scattered diamonds. Normally, Charlotte would have found the view soothing, but tonight, her mind was elsewhere. She could not stop thinking about how close she had come to harm, how the echo of her own scream had drawn the royal guard so swiftly to her aid. There was a strange mixture of fear and relief stirring inside her, and she could hardly tell which feeling was stronger. A soft knock at the door broke her thoughts. "Miss Charlotte," Captain Rowan's voice called gently from the other side. Charlotte's heart skipped a beat. She quickly opened the door and the captain stepped in, followed by two of his most trusted guards. Their presence was reassuring, like a shield that made her feel slightly safer in the large room. "We want to make sure you are all right," Captain Rowan said, his voice calm yet firm. "Are you hurt in any way?" Charlotte shook her head. "No, I'm fine physically," she admitted, "but it was so sudden I didn't know what to do." Captain Rowan nodded knowingly. "It's natural to feel frightened after such an incident. But remember, you are not alone here. We are sworn to protect you." The guards positioned themselves near the doors and windows of her room, ensuring that every entrance was watched. Charlotte observed them carefully. Their alertness was both impressive and comforting. Every movement was precise, every glance quick but controlled. It was as if danger could appear at any moment, and they were ready to face it without hesitation. "Tell me exactly what happened," Captain Rowan said after a pause, leaning slightly forward. Charlotte recounted the events slowly, her voice shaking at first but gaining strength as she spoke. She described walking down the corridor, the unexpected appearance of the figure, and her fear. She told them how she had called out, and how the presence of the guards had finally brought relief. As she spoke, Rowan and the other guards listened intently, their expressions serious but composed. When she finished, Captain Rowan nodded. "You acted correctly," he said. "Calling for help was the right thing to do. Sometimes fear can freeze us, but you chose to speak out. That courage matters." Charlotte felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words. Courage. It was not something she had considered she had, yet she realized that, despite her fear, she had acted in the only way that could save her. The captain then explained what would happen next. The palace would conduct a full search to ensure that no other intruders remained hidden. Every guard would patrol the corridors throughout the night, and Charlotte would not be left alone until morning. At first, she felt a little embarrassed by the attention, but she understood the necessity. Safety was important, and she had witnessed firsthand how quickly the guards could respond. As the night continued, the guards patrolled silently, their footsteps muffled against the marble floors. Charlotte stayed close to the center of her room, occasionally glancing out the window at the moonlit gardens. She began to notice details she had never appreciated before: the delicate patterns in the stone walkways, the soft rustle of leaves, the faint chirping of nocturnal birds. Though the night had begun in terror, it slowly turned into a time of reflection and observation. Hours passed, and the adrenaline in Charlotte's body slowly subsided. She realized that fear had a way of making time feel longer. Each second had been stretched thin during the encounter. But now, with the danger gone and the guards alert, she could feel her body relaxing, even slightly. She began to think about the palace in a different way, not just as a place of grandeur and history, but as a home where people worked tirelessly to protect each other. Captain Rowan remained by her side for much of the night, not out of necessity, but as a reassurance. They spoke quietly, sharing stories of the palace, its history, and the many times guards had stepped in to prevent harm. Charlotte found herself listening with fascination. She had always known the guards were skilled and disciplined, but hearing their experiences firsthand gave her a new appreciation for their bravery and dedication. At one point, she asked the captain, "Have you always wanted to be a guard?" He smiled faintly. "It's not just a job, it's a responsibility. From a young age, I trained for this, not for recognition or reward, but to protect those who cannot always protect themselves. It's an honor and a duty I take very seriously." Charlotte nodded, realizing how much courage it must take to face danger willingly, night after night. The night slowly gave way to dawn. The first rays of sunlight streamed through the windows, casting a soft glow over the palace walls. Charlotte felt a sense of calm she had not known since the evening began. The intruder was gone, the guards had remained vigilant, and she had survived a terrifying ordeal. The memory of her fear would linger, but it was tempered by the knowledge that she was not alone, that there were people willing to risk everything to keep her safe. Captain Rowan and the guards finally relaxed slightly, though their eyes remained sharp. "You should get some rest," he said gently. "The day will be busy and you need your strength." Charlotte smiled weakly, grateful for their presence and guidance. She realized that courage could take many forms. Sometimes it was standing up to fear, sometimes it was reaching out for help, and sometimes it was the quiet vigilance of those who cared for others. As she lay in bed, Charlotte reflected on what she had learned that night. Fear was natural, but it could be overcome with action and support. Courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to face it. And in the heart of the palace, where golden light illuminated marble halls, she had witnessed the power of loyalty, bravery, and protection firsthand. By mid-morning, the palace had returned to its usual rhythm. Courtiers and servants moved through the halls, unaware of the events that had unfolded the night before. Charlotte felt a quiet sense of strength as she joined them, her steps lighter, her mind sharper. Though the shadow of fear might linger, she knew that courage and resilience could carry her through anything. And so, Charlotte's day began not with terror, but with a sense of hope and determination. The palace, with all its beauty and grandeur, was more than a home. It was a place where bravery was lived every day, quietly and steadfastly, in ways that often went unnoticed, but were always felt by those who needed it most the day after the frightening night in the corridor. Charlotte awoke with a mixture of exhaustion and alertness. Even though the sun had risen, and the palace was bathed in warm, golden light, her mind remained half-occupied with the events of the previous evening. The corridors, which had once seemed grand and inviting, now carried subtle echoes of fear in her memory. She moved carefully, almost hesitantly, as if every step could bring back the terror she had felt. Her breakfast was served in a quiet chamber near the gardens. The aroma of freshly baked bread and warm tea filled the room, yet Charlotte found it difficult to focus. Her hands trembled slightly as she held her cup, and she noticed how the guards outside the room were already alert, stationed at precise points to ensure her safety. Their presence, which might have felt intimidating before, now brought a sense of reassurance. She realized that she was not alone and that there were people who would act without hesitation to protect her. Captain Rowan arrived shortly after her breakfast. His expression was serious but gentle. "Good morning, Miss Charlotte," he said. "How are you feeling today?" Charlotte smiled faintly. "Better than last night," she admitted, "but I can't forget what happened." Rowan nodded. "It's natural, experiences like that leave a mark, but marks also remind us of our strength. You acted bravely, and that courage carries forward." Charlotte listened carefully. The words of the captain were not mere comfort, they were truths that she had not fully realized. Courage was not just about facing fear in the moment. It was about carrying the lessons and strength gained from it into the days that followed. She sipped her tea slowly, allowing herself to absorb the calm tone of Rowan's voice. Later that morning, the palace received news that heightened the tension once more. A scout reported a suspicious figure seen near the outer walls late last night, moving quickly through the garden paths and disappearing into the forest beyond the palace grounds. The palace council held an urgent meeting, and Charlotte was asked to stay within the secure inner chambers until the matter was resolved. Though she felt anxious, she also understood the necessity. The safety of the palace and its residents could not be compromised. Captain Rowan visited her frequently throughout the day. They walked through the inner halls together, talking quietly as the guards followed at a respectful distance. Charlotte found herself learning more about the structure of the palace and the responsibilities of the royal guard. She was amazed at the careful coordination, the attention to detail, and the commitment each member showed. Every action, every precaution, was designed to prevent harm before it could reach the people they were sworn to protect. As the morning passed into afternoon, Charlotte grew more curious about the person who had caused her fear. Who could have been bold enough to enter the palace unnoticed, and what was their intention? The questions filled her mind, creating a mix of anxiety and fascination. Captain Rowan noticed her thoughts and spoke gently. Curiosity is natural, but be careful. Not everyone who enters the palace means well. Let the guards handle the danger while you focus on safety and calm. Despite the caution, Charlotte's interest could not be fully contained. She asked Rowan to describe the methods the guards used to secure the palace. He explained how patrols were scheduled, how hidden passages were monitored, and how communication between guards ensured rapid responses to any potential threats. Charlotte listened intently, absorbing every detail. She realized that the palace was like a living organism, with every part working together to maintain balance and security. By late afternoon, Charlotte began to regain a sense of normalcy. She walked to the garden under the watchful eyes of a few guards, feeling the sunlight on her face and the soft breeze through her hair. The flowers were bright and colorful, the fountain sparkled in the sunlight, and birds chirped merrily from the trees. The palace, in all its beauty, seemed almost untouched by the events of the previous night. Yet Charlotte knew better. She understood now that beauty and danger could exist side by side, and that vigilance was a quiet but powerful form of courage. As she wandered through the garden, a thought struck her. Perhaps the palace was not just a place of protection, but a place of learning and growth. Every experience, whether frightening or joyful, carried lessons. The night's terror had taught her fear, courage, and trust. The day's calm had shown her observation, patience, and reflection. And in both, she saw the importance of people who cared enough to act decisively when danger arose. Later, Captain Rowan brought Charlotte to a quiet room in the palace where plans were being made to improve security. Maps of the palace and its surroundings were spread across a large table, and guards pointed out areas that required extra attention. Charlotte listened carefully as Rowan explained the changes being considered. New patrol routes, improved lighting in certain corridors, and additional checkpoints near entrances. She realized that the guards' work went far beyond just responding to immediate threats. It was about anticipating danger and preventing it before it occurred. Charlotte asked questions, showing a curiosity that surprised even herself. Rowan answered patiently, explaining how every decision was made with the safety of the palace and its residents in mind. Charlotte began to understand that courage was not only about acting in the moment of fear, but also about planning, foresight, and preparation. She admired the dedication of the guards, who spent their days and nights thinking not just of themselves, but of the people they were sworn to protect. As evening approached, the palace took on a tranquil glow. Lanterns were lit, casting soft light along the corridors and gardens. Charlotte felt a sense of calm she had not known the night before. She walked slowly, observing the palace with fresh eyes. Every shadow no longer seemed threatening, every echo no longer seemed frightening. She understood now that the fear she had experienced was temporary, but the courage and vigilance of those around her were permanent and reassuring. That night, as Charlotte prepared for bed, she reflected on the events of the past day. She had faced fear, witnessed bravery, and learned the importance of observation and patience. The palace was a place of beauty and history, but it was also a place where courage was quietly lived out every day by people who chose to act when it mattered most. Charlotte realized that she, too, had learned something vital. Strength could be found not only in action, but also in trust, awareness, and understanding. As she closed her eyes, she felt gratitude for the guardians who had protected her and for the lessons she had learned. The night held no terror this time, only a quiet sense of preparedness and hope. Charlotte understood that life in the palace would always carry challenges, but with courage, vigilance, and trust, she could face them with confidence. And so, the third day in the palace ended with a sense of calm resilience. Charlotte's heart had grown stronger, her mind sharper, and her understanding deeper. She realized that the palace was more than a place of grandeur. It was a living testament to bravery, duty, and the quiet, steady courage that protected everyone within its walls. The next morning, Charlotte awoke with a mixture of anticipation and lingering caution. After the events of the previous nights and the day's lessons, she felt a strange combination of confidence and alertness. The palace corridors, which had once seemed ordinary, now carried a sense of purpose for her. Every marble step, every shadowed corner reminded her that vigilance and awareness were as important as courage. She dressed quickly, choosing practical attire that allowed ease of movement, and prepared for another day that promised both learning and responsibility. Captain Rowan was already waiting for her outside her chambers. His expression was calm but focused, a reflection of the discipline he had cultivated over years of service. "Good morning, Miss Charlotte," he greeted, his voice steady. "Today, we will take a tour of the palace's inner workings, and I will show you how the guards maintain security during the day." Charlotte nodded eagerly. She had learned much in the past few days, but seeing the palace's inner operations firsthand promised to deepen her understanding. Their first stop was the Central Guard Station, a room filled with maps, monitors, and detailed records of the palace's layout. Rowan explained how each guard was assigned specific areas, how communication was maintained between posts, and how every door, window, and corridor was monitored. Charlotte listened carefully, absorbing every detail. She realized that the palace's security was not just about responding to danger, but about anticipating it, preparing for it, and preventing it before it could happen. As they moved through the corridors, Charlotte noticed small details she had overlooked before. Hidden alcoves, narrow staircases, and even the way the chandeliers were secured, all were designed with both beauty and safety in mind. Rowan explained how these features helped the guards maintain an advantage over anyone who might try to enter unnoticed. Charlotte was fascinated by the combination of elegance and strategy. The palace was not just a home, it was a fortress, a place where thought and design worked together to ensure protection. Later, they visited the training grounds. Here, the young recruits practiced their drills with swords, shields, and strategic maneuvers. Charlotte watched as the trainees moved with precision, their focus absolute, their movements synchronized. Rowan explained that training was continuous, and even experienced guards like himself practiced regularly to maintain peak readiness. Charlotte admired their dedication. It was one thing to hear about courage and duty, it was another to witness it in motion. The commitment of the guards left a deep impression on her, reinforcing the lessons she had learned about bravery and vigilance. After the training grounds, they returned to the gardens. Charlotte felt a sense of relief in the open air, but she remained alert. Rowan walked beside her, pointing out areas that required particular attention, explaining why patrols were scheduled at certain times, and how the guards anticipated possible threats. Charlotte realized that the palace, in all its beauty, was constantly alive with activity. Every step, every movement, was part of a larger effort to maintain safety and order. While walking through a quiet corridor near the library, Charlotte suddenly noticed something unusual, a small, folded note tucked behind one of the pillars. She picked it up carefully and unfolded it. The message was cryptic, but suggested that someone had been observing the palace for days. Charlotte's heart raced. Though she had grown more confident, the note reminded her that danger could appear unexpectedly, even when the palace seemed calm and secure. She handed it to Captain Rowan immediately. Rowan examined the note, his brow furrowed. "This confirms that our intruder was not acting alone or by chance," he said thoughtfully. "Someone has been planning, watching, and waiting. We will need to be even more vigilant." Charlotte felt a mixture of fear and determination. She realized that the previous encounters had been only the beginning, and that understanding the intentions behind these actions was as important as responding to them. Throughout the day, Charlotte accompanied the guards as they conducted inspections of the palace. They checked doors, windows, and hidden passages, ensuring that every possible entry point was secure. She observed how they worked as a team, communicating silently with gestures and brief words, moving efficiently without causing alarm to others in the palace. Charlotte felt a growing sense of respect and admiration for the precision and professionalism of the royal guards. By late afternoon, Charlotte and Captain Rowan returned to the central hall, where the sunlight streamed through the high windows, casting patterns on the polished floors. Rowan turned to Charlotte, his expression serious but encouraging. "You've learned much about vigilance, observation, and courage," he said. "But there is another lesson, the importance of calm and presence of mind. Courage alone is not enough. One must also think clearly, act deliberately, and anticipate challenges before they arise." Charlotte nodded, understanding the depth of his words. Courage without thought could lead to rash decisions, but courage combined with awareness and preparation created true strength. As the day progressed, Charlotte began to notice subtle changes in her own behavior. She moved with more confidence, observed details more carefully, and felt a stronger sense of responsibility for her surroundings. The palace, which had seemed overwhelming at first, now appeared as a place where learning, growth, and courage were intertwined. Every corridor, every room, every garden was a classroom, teaching lessons not found in books alone. That evening, the palace prepared for a special gathering of the council and trusted advisors. Charlotte was invited to attend, both as a guest and as an observer of how decisions were made to protect the palace and its residents. She sat quietly, absorbing the discussion, noting the careful balance between caution and action, and realizing that bravery often required wisdom and foresight as much as physical readiness. As the meeting concluded, Charlotte stepped into the quiet palace gardens once more. The moonlight reflected on the fountain, and the flowers glowed softly in the silver light. She felt a sense of calm and accomplishment. She had faced fear, observed courage, and learned lessons that would remain with her for a lifetime. The palace was more than a home. It was a living testament to bravery, discipline, and the quiet strength that protected everyone within its walls. That night, Charlotte prepared for bed with a sense of readiness. She knew that challenges could arise at any moment, but she felt stronger, wiser, and more confident than ever before. Courage, vigilance, and careful observation had become part of her, and she understood that true strength came not only from action but from awareness, preparation, and trust in those around her. As she closed her eyes, she reflected on the journey so far. From the terrifying scream that had alerted the royal guard to the lessons of courage and vigilance she had learned during the day, Charlotte realized that she had grown in ways she had never imagined. The palace was no longer just a place of grandeur. It was a place of learning, strength, and quiet heroism. And in its corridors, gardens, and halls, she had discovered the power of courage, awareness, and determination to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The following morning, the palace was filled with a quiet tension that Charlotte could feel even from her chambers. After the discovery of the cryptic note, the royal guards had heightened their vigilance, and every corridor seemed alive with purpose. Charlotte, now more aware of her surroundings than ever, moved carefully, observing every shadow, every flicker of movement, and every sound. She had learned from the past days that courage alone was not enough. Awareness and preparedness were equally essential. Captain Rowan approached her as she descended the stairs to the main hall. His presence was steady and reassuring, and his voice carried the calm authority that had guided her through the previous days. "Miss Charlotte, today we will take additional precautions," he said. "We have reason to believe that the intruder's intentions were deliberate. While there is no immediate danger, we must be ready for anything." Charlotte nodded, her hands slightly trembling, not from fear, but from the anticipation of what might come. The guards had prepared the palace meticulously. Every entrance was secured, every window monitored, and additional patrols moved silently through corridors and gardens. Charlotte followed Rowan closely, noticing how the guards communicated with subtle gestures and brief whispers, their coordination seamless. It was as if the entire palace operated as a single, living entity, working together to protect those within it. Charlotte felt both impressed and comforted by the precision and dedication of the royal guard. As they passed through the inner courtyard, Charlotte's eyes caught movement near the edge of the garden. A shadow darted behind a row of trees. She froze for a moment, her heart racing. Rowan immediately signaled for the guards to move in quietly but decisively. Charlotte stepped back, keeping herself safe while watching the guards act with calm determination. The intruder, realizing they had been spotted, tried to flee, but the guards anticipated every move. With careful coordination, they blocked the escape paths, guiding the figure toward a secure area where they could be safely apprehended. Charlotte held her breath as she watched the scene unfold. She had learned much about courage and vigilance, but seeing it in action, executed with such skill and precision, left her both amazed and inspired. Finally, the intruder was cornered and disarmed without harm to anyone. Rowan approached, ensuring that the situation was fully under control. The intruder's expression shifted from defiance to resignation. They realized that the palace's guardians were not just strong and disciplined, but also patient and strategic. Charlotte felt a wave of relief wash over her. The danger that had loomed over the palace for days had been contained, thanks to the courage, skill, and dedication of the royal guard. Rowan turned to Charlotte, his expression softening. "You've witnessed something important today," he said. "Courage is not only in facing fear, but also in acting wisely with awareness and preparation. The palace is safe because those who care for it are vigilant, disciplined, and ready to act when needed." Charlotte nodded, understanding the depth of his words. She realized that bravery was not always dramatic or loud. Sometimes it was quiet, steady, and unwavering. After the intruder was taken into custody, the palace returned to its normal rhythm. Courtiers, servants, and residents resumed their daily routines, unaware of the events that had unfolded so close to them. Charlotte walked through the corridors, observing the subtle signs of vigilance that remained. The guards' careful positions, the reinforced doors, and the watchful eyes scanning every corner. She felt a deep appreciation for the unseen acts of courage that ensured everyone's safety. Later in the day, Rowan invited Charlotte to a small meeting with a few senior guards. They discussed how the palace could further improve security, including better monitoring of outer areas and more regular patrol rotations. Charlotte listened carefully, fascinated by the attention to detail and the thought put into every decision. She asked questions, eager to understand how courage, strategy, and vigilance worked together to protect the palace. The guards answered patiently, showing her that bravery was as much about planning and foresight as it was about action in the moment. As the sun began to set, casting a warm, golden glow across the palace, Charlotte walked through the gardens once more. The fountains sparkled, the flowers swayed gently, and the air was filled with the soft sound of birds settling in for the night. She reflected on the events of the past few days, the fear she had felt, the courage she had witnessed, and the lessons she had learned. The palace was no longer just a place of beauty. It was a living testament to strength, vigilance, and the quiet heroism of those who dedicated themselves to protecting others. Charlotte felt a deep sense of growth within herself. She had faced fear and learned to trust in the strength and dedication of others. She had observed courage in action and understood that it required both heart and mind. And she had discovered the importance of vigilance, preparation, and awareness in ensuring safety and peace. These lessons would remain with her for the rest of her life. That evening, as Charlotte prepared for bed, she felt a profound sense of gratitude. She was grateful for the royal guard who had answered her call for help without hesitation, for Captain Rowan who had guided her through the challenges, and for the lessons that had made her stronger and wiser. She realized that true courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act with confidence, awareness, and integrity even when fear was present. As she closed her eyes, the palace around her remained quiet, safe, and protected. The events of the past days had tested her, but they had also taught her invaluable lessons about bravery, vigilance, and trust. Charlotte knew that the palace would continue to face challenges, but she also knew that with courage, preparation, and unity, any challenge could be met and overcome. And so, the story concluded not with terror, but with a deep sense of accomplishment, learning, and resilience. Charlotte had grown from a frightened visitor into a young woman who understood the power of courage, the importance of vigilance, and the quiet heroism that lived in the hearts of those who dedicated themselves to protecting others. The palace, with all its grandeur, beauty, and hidden strength, remained a place where fear could be faced, courage could be found, and safety could be ensured, all through the quiet, steady efforts of those who cared enough to act when it mattered most. Charlotte drifted into sleep with a heart full of gratitude and a mind full of lessons that would guide her for the rest of her life. She had faced fear, witnessed courage, and learned that true strength comes from a combination of bravery, awareness, and trust. And in the quiet, shining halls of the palace, she knew that safety, honor, and vigilance would always prevail.